but you can cheat a little bit sometimes in scenes, especially if it's a well-written scene. You haven't really deciphered or analyzed what the two conversations are, what the theme is, and maybe what your objective is. But the dialogue's so good, and you and the actor are going naturally, and the audience picks it up. So sometimes actors, this is not a good thing to say, but sometimes actors can cheat in scene work. But in a monologue, there's nowhere to hide because there's no one to work off of. And so there's no pressure coming at you. So the pressure has to be internalized. And so, again, I don't want to say more so because it's absolute in all acting, whether or not you're doing mime or cartoon work or voiceover work, but in a monologue, the obstacle or the conflict is not inherent because you're alone. And so it has to be internalized, which means you need desperately to know what your counterpoint is, which means you must desperately know what the underneath is, you know? You have to ferret out what the A and the B stories are, and the despite the fact that. And the despite the fact that, the counterpoint, the B conversation, becomes the thing that you're trying to push against. And every time you see a great actor do a great monologue, there's that increasing tension because they're playing opposite something inside of themselves, right? Why it doesn't feel right is because you're probably not isolating the B story and understanding what it is your character is fighting against. So what I would do is, again, I would go post the monologues that you're doing and ask for help. And just go, what do you guys think the B story is in this? Clearly the objective is to get my friend to understand the pain that I'm in from that childhood memory, but the counterpoint would be what? And it's gonna be in the script. You're not gonna have to make it up. Sometimes it's a little elusive, like sometimes it feels a little oblique and you have to go, wait a second, and you have to kind of calculate it out, but it's there, it's always there. When your character has a massive amount of exposition. In one of the actresses I was working with on the TV show, like one of the scenes is just like basically only exists so the audience can understand exactly why they're all mutants, right? And it's just this long monologue of like explanation. I know the writer, so I don't want to be but it's terrible writing. And so it basically, you can just feel the writer going, a good actor will figure out how to do this. And so an expository scene is when your character is saying all the information the audience needs for the plot to continue, and they haven't figured out a way to get that information in through plot. So they just have somebody say, really? What is that again? Well, let me tell you, blah, 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 monologue on all the science. Oh, now I understand. End of scene. And you just go, it kills a scene. It's impossible to watch. It's incredibly boring, and actors die on it. And again, the way to solve that problem is to set up, understand what the B story would be that you're playing against. And it's gonna, and for this character, it was she. I don't want to give away too much, but anyway, she doesn't have, even though she's the smartest person in the room, she doesn't have the confidence to feel like she really deserves to be heard. The problem is her objective is these other people are paying no attention to what's really important, and she's got to get them educated so that they can move on. So despite the fact that I'm a fraud and I'm not used to being speaking and I'm not used to taking a leadership role, for God's sakes, guys, get on board here. I need you to understand what I'm saying. And so she played it that way, and it totally worked. So it's that, and again, we didn't make that up. That's inherent in the earlier scenes. And so the scene isn't never about the monologue. The scene is never about the exposition. The scene is never about the monologue. The scene is about what's happening underneath the actor. So even though the scene was about having trilophorophyloids inside of our blood, which allows us to have some pheromonic qualities that blah blah, and she had this huge monologue, it was real. I was like saying to her, the scene is about a young woman standing up and speaking even though she feels like she never has the right to. And when you do that, then it becomes, right, a story. And so sometimes you know, A and B conversations, a director, this is a side note, but a director will say, okay, that's the plot, but what's the story? And in a lot of ways, that's the A versus the B. Like the plot is I need you to, step away from the bridge. But the story is finding the hero in myself. So, but I have heard a lot of directors go, okay, there's the plot, but what's the story? And I think they're saying A versus B. And so in your monologue, don't get caught up with the plot of the monologue. Clearly you are. The character's trying to say something and affect change, and there's an objective and there's actions and stuff. But don't forget that there's something else happening. And that something else is where the mystery and the humanity is.